She came to the base only to visit her husband, carrying a wool scarf still smelling of lavender detergent. No uniform, no insignia, just a wife in the middle of winter. The mountains rose white and silent around Forward Operating Base Granite, and Alara Sinclair thought only about 2 quiet days with the man she loved before the long drive home. She had no idea that in 4 hours everything would burn. The Toyota sedan climbed the access road through pine forests heavy with snow. January cold pressed against the windows. Alara drove with both hands on the wheel, country music playing low on the radio. She hummed along to a song about going home, about leaving the past behind, about becoming someone new. That's what she'd done. 8 years of becoming someone new. The memory hit without warning. Her hands on a rifle, the weight familiar as breathing. Explosions in the distance. The smell of cordite and blood. A voice on the radio, Phantom 6, you are cleared to engage. She shook her head hard. The memory scattered like smoke. That was another life, she said aloud to the empty car. The scarf lay on the passenger seat, hand-knit with uneven stitches. Her sister had made it 3 Christmases ago, back when Alara was just a history teacher, just a normal person living a normal life. Back when no one knew what she'd been before. The gate to Fob Granite appeared through the trees. Chain-link fence guard shack, 2 soldiers in winter gear, stamping their feet against the cold. The sign read, authorized personnel only. No photography. Alara pulled up to the barrier, rolled down her window. Cold air rushed in sharp enough to hurt. The guard was young, maybe 22, with a name tape that read Hollis. His breath made white clouds in the morning air. He leaned down to check her identification, his rifle slung across his chest with the casual comfort of someone who'd carried it so long he forgot it was there. Morning, ma'am. Purpose of visit. Visiting my husband, Captain Garrett Sinclair. Hollis checked her driver's license against his clipboard. His eyes were red from overnight watch, exhausted in the way that only long, cold hours could create. He studied her face, then the photo, then her face again. Prior service, ma'am. The question landed like a stone in still water. Alara smiled the way she'd learned to smile over 8 years of lying. Easy, dismissive, the smile of someone with nothing to hide. Long time ago. Different person now. Hollis handed back her identification. Sign the visitor log. 3rd building past the fuel depot, you'll find the command trailer. She signed with cold fingers. The pen slipped slightly. Her handwriting looked wrong too, controlled the muscle memory of someone who'd filled out after-action reports under stress. She caught herself and loosened her grip, made the letters more casual, more civilian. Hollis raised the barrier, waved her through. Forward Operating Base Granite sat in a valley between 2 ridgelines. 27 buildings, most of them prefabricated structures, half buried in snowdrifts. Temporary like everything military, built to last just long enough. The morning was pale blue and brittle, the kind of cold that made sound carry strangely across distance. Alara drove slowly through the compound. 2 soldiers passed carrying ammunition crates, their conversation fragmenting in the cold. One laughed about something. The sound felt thin, stretched across the frozen air like wire. She told herself not to look, not to assess, not to slip back into old patterns. But her eyes tracked anyway. The north fence line, chain link topped with concertina wire already rusting. Beyond it, the north ridge rose 400 feet, pine trees heavy with snow, rock faces jutting through like broken teeth. The ridge dominated the view, watching the base like a silent observer. Perfect overwatch position. She caught the thought and crushed it. No, she didn't think like that anymore. It was just a pretty mountain. Just scenery. Nothing tactical. Nothing dangerous. The fuel depot sat behind more chain link. Diesel tanks nested together, a small guard shack that looked empty. No one watching it. The motor pool beyond held 2 Humvees, one with its hood propped open, someone working underneath. Alara pulled into the visitor parking area and killed the engine. Sat for a moment in the sudden silence. Her hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. Coming here was a mistake. Being on a military base again, even as a visitor, even as just a wife, it woke things up inside her that she'd spent 8 years trying to put to sleep. She grabbed the scarf, got out. The cold hit her like a fist. The command trailer was easy to find, the only building with satellite dishes on the roof and radio antennas sprouting like metal flowers. She climbed the steps and knocked once before pushing the door open. Garrett stood with his back to her, bent over a radio set, adjusting frequency dials. He wore a thermal undershirt and cargo pants. His uniform jacket hung on a chair. His shoulders were tight with concentration, the way they always got when he was fighting with malfunctioning equipment. Static crackled from the speakers. He twisted a dial. More static. He swore quietly. That thing's still giving you trouble. He spun around, his face opened with surprise, then warmth, then something like relief. Garrett was 41, but looked older in this light. Gray in his stubble, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 3 years ago. 3 tours, and too many years spent in places that wore men down to their foundations. God, I thought you weren't coming until next week. Got my dates mixed up, she lied. She'd moved the trip up after monitoring weather patterns and reading news reports about increased activity near the border. Something felt wrong. She couldn't name it, didn't want to name it, but the feeling had pulled her here 3 days early. Garrett crossed the small space and pulled her close. He smelled like instant coffee and cold metal and the laundry detergent they'd used for 5 years of marriage. Safe smells, home smells. How long can you stay? 2 days, maybe 3 if the roads hold. He pulled back to study her face. His thumb traced the line of her jaw. You look tired. 6-hour drive. You look more than tired. She unwound the scarf and draped it over a chair. The hand-knit wool uneven and imperfect and normal. Evidence of the life she'd built, the person she'd become. You look worse, she said. He laughed, but it was true. Dark circles, the gray spreading. Garrett was aging fast out here in the cold and isolation. Equipment issues, he said. Half the perimeter sensors are glitching, snow getting into the housings, and the satellite link keeps dropping during shift changes. Alara moved to the radio console. Her finger stopped inches from the dial he'd been adjusting. She could see the problem. Frequency drift from temperature cycling. The backup battery level was low. The antenna cable had stress cracks in the insulation. The emergency frequency card was taped to the wall with old tape that had lost its adhesive on one corner. She pulled her hand back. Civilian wife. She was a civilian wife who knew nothing about radio communications. Can they fix it? She asked. Eventually, maybe. The replacement parts are 3 weeks out. Garrett filled a thermos from a coffee maker that smelled burned. Come on, I'll show you where you can drop your bag. Visitor quarters aren't much, but the heat works. They stepped back into the cold. The wind had shifted. Alara paused on the steps, turned her face toward the north ridge. The temperature had dropped at least 5 degrees in the last 20 minutes. The sky was too pale, too still. The kind of still that came before things broke loose. Weather coming in, she asked. Garrett checked his watch. Not supposed to. High-pressure systems should stay clear until Wednesday. Alara looked at the sky, looked at the ridge, felt something tighten in her chest. Maybe the forecast is wrong. Maybe. But he didn't sound concerned. Why would he be? This was a monitoring station. Low-threat posting. 27 soldiers watching screens and maintaining equipment and counting days until rotation. Nothing ever happened here. The visitor quarters were exactly what Garrett had promised. A prefab unit with 4 bunks, thin mattresses, a small heater that rattled when it ran. The windows were frosted with ice on the inside. Alara set her bag on the bunk nearest the door. She didn't unpack. Not yet. First, she walked to the window and looked out at the compound. Movement everywhere. Shift change happening. Soldiers moving between buildings, voices carrying in the thin air. Someone started a generator. The smell of diesel exhaust drifted past. Normal. Everything was normal. So why did her hands shake? Alara spent the next hour walking the base, playing the role of a bored spouse killing time. Hands in her jacket pockets, breath making white clouds, taking photos with her phone of the mountains and the snow and the pretty winter landscape. Not assessing, not mapping, just walking. But her subconscious worked anyway. 27 buildings, 3 defensive positions visible from here, probably 6 total. The north approach was vulnerable. No overlapping fields of fire. The sensors she passed were civilian-grade motion detectors, and one had its housing cracked open, exposed circuitry already icing over. She forced herself to stop thinking tactically. Focused on the photos instead. Posted one to social media with a caption about beautiful Colorado winters. Hearts and comments appeared within minutes. Her students, her coworkers, her normal life reaching out to remind her who she was now. The commissary sat at the south end of the compound. Alara bought a coffee that tasted like it had been made yesterday and reheated twice. She sat at a table near the window and watched soldiers come and go. Young faces. So young. Some of them couldn't be older than 19. One of them caught her eye. Baby-faced kid with a name tape that read Sterling. He was trying to look tough, trying to look like he belonged, but his movements were too careful, too conscious. First posting, probably. Still learning how to carry himself like a soldier. Alara looked away. Not her concern, not her responsibility. A voice spoke near her shoulder. Mrs. Sinclair. She turned. An old man stood there, ramrod straight despite his age, which had to be late 60s at least. He wore a uniform with Colonel's eagles on the collar perfectly pressed despite the cold and the remote location. His face was weathered like old leather lines carved deep by decades of sun and wind and decisions that left marks. His eyes were pale blue and sharp as broken glass. "I'm Colonel Thaddeus Blackwood," he said. "Your husband invited me to give a lecture to the younger soldiers. Lessons from past operations." He extended his hand. Alara shook it. His grip was firm, calloused, the handshake of someone who'd done hard things for a long time. "Elle Sinclair. Nice to meet you, Colonel." His eyes held hers for a moment too long. Something flickered there. Recognition, number impossible. She'd changed her appearance, lost the military bearing, become someone completely different. "Enjoy your visit, Mrs. Sinclair." He moved away toward a group of young soldiers. Alara watched him go, felt something cold settle in her stomach. No, she was being paranoid. He was just a retired colonel, nothing more. The lecture happened at 1300 hours in the main briefing room. Alara slipped in through the back door, curious despite herself. Maybe because she taught history now and couldn't help being interested in primary sources. Or maybe because something about Colonel Blackwood made her want to understand who he was. 20 soldiers sat in folding chairs. Garrett stood at the front next to Blackwood. A projector threw images on a screen. Maps, tactical diagrams, black and white photographs from decades ago. Blackwood spoke without notes. His voice carried authority like some men carried weapons. "During the Cold War, we ran classified operations without satellite support, without digital communications, without drones or thermal imaging or any of the technology you consider standard today." He clicked to an image of Berlin at night, the wall still standing. Berlin, 1979. "We had intelligence that a Soviet operative was meeting with East German handlers. Our orders were surveillance only. Gather information. Don't engage." The young soldiers leaned forward. Even the ones who'd been checking their phones put them away. "We spent 3 months in that city, living in safe houses, following targets on foot. No radio contact, no extraction plan if things went wrong. We relied on iron discipline, patience, and skills that took years to develop." He clicked again. Prague, another city at night. Prague, 1983. Similar operation, different enemy, same requirements. We succeeded because we understood something that's being lost in the modern military. He paused. Let the silence stretch. Technology fails. Satellites go down. Radios malfunction. Drones get jammed. But skill doesn't fail. Discipline doesn't fail. A soldier who truly knows his craft can operate in any environment with or without support. Alara felt something twist in her chest. Those words, that philosophy, it was what she'd been taught, what she'd lived by for 8 years. Blackwood's eyes swept the room and landed on her standing in the back, held there for just a moment, then moved on. "The missions I'm describing are still classified. I can't give you details. I can only tell you this, the old ways work. They've always worked. And when everything else fails, they're what will save your life." The lecture continued for another 30 minutes. Maps and stories and lessons from operations that officially never happened. The young soldiers were respectful, but she could see their disconnection. They lived in a different world, a world of GPN, encrypted comms, and air support that arrived in minutes. The idea of operating for months with nothing but skills and discipline seemed almost quaint to them. When it ended, Alara slipped out before Garrett could see her. She didn't know why she'd stayed for the whole thing, didn't want to examine why Blackwood's words had resonated so deeply. She found herself walking toward the perimeter fence, the north side, the vulnerable approach, the ridge looming above, just a mountain, just trees and rock and snow. But her mind wouldn't stop working. 400 feet of elevation, pine forest providing concealment, multiple positions for overwatch, clear lines of sight to every building in the compound. If someone wanted to attack this base, that ridge was where they'd set up. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Alara spun around. Blackwood stood 10 feet away, hands in his pockets, looking up at the ridge with an expression that might have been appreciation or might have been tactical assessment. "I didn't hear you approach," she said. "Old habits." He moved to stand beside her. They looked at the mountain together. "Your husband tells me you're a teacher. History. High school? Rewarding work. Most days?" Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, but weighted, like both of them were waiting for the other to speak first. Finally, Blackwood said very quietly, Mrs. Sinclair, or should I say Captain Sinclair. The world tilted. Alara's breath caught in her chest. She forced herself to keep looking at the mountain, to not react, to maintain the performance she'd been giving for 8 years. I don't know what you're talking about. Fallujah 2017, Scout Sniper, call sign Phantom 6, 143 confirmed kills. Her hands were shaking. She shoved them deeper into her pockets. I was the one who recruited you to Scout Sniper School, Blackwood continued. His voice was gentle, almost kind. 2009. You just finished your second deployment. Your platoon commander recommended you. Said you had the best natural instincts he'd ever seen. I interviewed you personally. Alara's throat was tight. You're mistaken. I never forget my snipers, especially not the best one I ever trained. She finally turned to look at him. His pale blue eyes held no judgment, no accusation, just recognition. That person doesn't exist anymore. You can retire from the Corps, Blackwood said. Can't retire from who you are. I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for 8 years. Normal life, normal job. That other life is done. Is it? The question hung in the present air between them. Alara pulled her scarf tighter. My husband doesn't know, and I'd appreciate it if you didn't tell him. Blackwood nodded slowly. Your secret's safe with me, but I want to ask you something. What? Do you ever miss it? The honest answers tried to force its way out. The truth that she'd been running from for 8 years. The truth that she'd buried under lesson plans and grading papers in a deliberately constructed life of absolute normalcy. Not once, she lied. Blackwood smiled slightly, like he could hear the lie and understood it. Time will tell. He walked away. Left her standing at the fence, staring at the ridge, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Someone knew. After 8 years of perfect secrecy, someone knew. But he'd promised not to tell, and she had no reason to doubt a colonel's word. It would be fine. She'd spend 2 days here. Go home. Continue being Elle Sinclair, the history teacher. Continue being normal. The ridge watched her with its white silence. Just a mountain, she told herself again. Just trees and rock and snow. Lunch was in the mess hall at 12:30. Alara sat across from Garrett at a table near the back. The sandwich tasted like cardboard and salt. Around them, other soldiers ate and talked and existed in that strange liminal space of military posting where nothing ever happened and every day felt the same. How was your morning? Garrett asked. Good. Walked around, took some photos, met Colonel Blackwood. What did you think of him? Alara chose her words carefully. He seems like he's seen things most people can't imagine. Cold War operations, some of it still classified. Then Gulf War commander. He's a legend in certain circles. Garrett took a bite of his sandwich, chewed, swallowed. I'm glad you're here, even for just 2 days. It gets lonely out here. How much longer until rotation? 4 months, maybe 5 if they extend us. He reached across the table to take her hand. His fingers were warm, solid, real. Then I'm thinking about putting in for a desk job. Pentagon maybe, or training command. Something stationary. Something where we can actually live in the same place for more than 6 months. I'd like that. Yeah. They smiled at each other, a married couple making plans for a future that felt close enough to touch. Normal plans, normal lives. If only he knew what she'd been, what she'd done. The blood on her hands that no amount of time or distance could wash away. 143 confirmed kills. Each one a name, a face, a life that ended because she squeezed a trigger. She'd told herself for 8 years that she'd left that behind, become someone new. But Blackwood was right. You couldn't retire from who you were. The radio on Garrett's belt crackled, a voice distorted by static. Captain Sinclair to command. We've got another sensor malfunction. North perimeter. Garrett sighed, keyed the radio. Copy, I'll be there in 5. To Alara. Equipment keeps failing. I swear we're held together with duct tape and hope out here. Can I come with you? I'd like to see more of the base. Sure, just stay back from the actual work. Safety protocols. They walked together through the cold. The wind had picked up. Snow was starting to blow sideways across the compound in thin white sheets. The temperature was still dropping. Alara could feel it in her bones. The north perimeter fence was maybe 200 yards from the main buildings. The sensor in question was mounted on a post, a small gray box with a cracked housing. A soldier was already there checking connections. His name tape read Brennan, Staff Sergeant, mid-30s. The kind of competent NCO that every unit relied on to actually keep things running. "Third time this week, sir," Brennan said. "Either these things are malfunctioning, or we've got something tripping them every night." "Probably deer," Garrett said. "Or the wind. These civilian-grade sensors aren't made for this environment." Alara stood back, watched them work. But her eyes kept drifting to the ridge. Closer now. She could see individual trees, patches of exposed rock, the perfect concealment of the forest. "What's the detection range on these sensors?" she asked. Garrett looked up. 100 yards maybe, when they're working. "And if they fail?" "We've got overlapping coverage, in theory. And the satellite should pick up any vehicles or large groups approaching. Should. The link's been spotty. We're working on it." Brennan caught her eye. There was something in his expression, a kind of professional concern that she recognized from her own years in uniform. The look of someone who knew they were operating with degraded capabilities but couldn't do anything about it. "All three sensors have been triggering," Alara asked. "Same time each night." "Yes, ma'am, around 0300, like clockwork." "That's not deer." The words were out before she could stop them. Both men turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" Garrett asked. Alara felt the old instincts rising, the tactical mind that she'd tried so hard to bury. "Deer are random. They don't show up at the same time every night, and they don't trigger multiple sensors in sequence. That's a pattern. Someone or something is probing your perimeter. Testing response times." Brennan's eyes widened slightly. "Ma'am, Oh, lucky guess," she said quickly. "I watch a lot of military documentaries." But the damage was done. Both men were looking at her differently now, questioning. "It's probably nothing," Garrett said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "We'll monitor it. Increase patrols tonight." They walked back toward the main buildings. Garrett's hand found hers, but she could feel the questions building in him. She'd said too much, revealed too much. 8 years of careful performance, and she'd cracked it in 30 seconds because she couldn't help analyzing the tactical situation. Stupid. So stupid. "Elle," Garrett said slowly, "have you been reading up on military stuff? Is that something you're interested in now?" "Just trying to understand your world better. What you do out here." "You sounded pretty confident about that pattern analysis." "Like I said, documentaries. I teach history. You pick things up." He accepted the explanation, or pretended to. They were married but not mind readers. There was still room for small mysteries, small secrets. If only he knew the size of the secret she carried. The afternoon passed in normal ways. Alara read a book in the visitor quarters, dozed for an hour, woke to find the light fading and the wind howling outside. The storm was coming in, despite the forecast. The sky had gone from pale blue to dark gray. Snow was falling in earnest now. Dinner was in the mess hall again. The same cardboard food, the same conversations fragmenting around her. Garrett was distracted, checking his radio every few minutes, worry lines deepening around his eyes. "The satellite link is completely down now," he said, "and the backup generator for the command trailer is making a weird sound. If that goes, we lose primary communications." "Can you call for a replacement?" "Already did, but it won't arrive until tomorrow at the earliest. Weather's closing in." Alara looked out the window. The storm had arrived in full force. Whiteout conditions. Visibility maybe 20 feet. The kind of weather that grounded helicopters and closed roads and left you isolated with whatever resources you had. The kind of weather that would be perfect cover for an attack. She crushed the thought. Paranoid. She was being paranoid. Nothing was going to happen. This was a monitoring station. Nobody cared about forward operating base Granite, but her hands were shaking again. At 1900 hours, Blackwood found her alone in the commissary. She was drinking bad coffee and trying to read her book, and failing because her mind wouldn't stop working through scenarios. He sat down across from her without asking permission. "You're worried," he said. "I'm fine." "Captain Sinclair, Elle, I know that look. I've seen it on every combat veteran who can't turn off their threat assessment." She closed the book. "The sensors, the pattern, it's not deer." "I know. And the equipment failures. All at once. The timing is suspicious." "I know that too. So why isn't anyone doing anything?" Blackwood leaned back in his chair. "Because they're young. Because this is a low-threat posting and nothing ever happens here. Because the human mind is very good at finding innocent explanations for concerning patterns." "But you see it." "I see it, and so do you. Because we're old enough and experienced enough to know that sometimes the worst thing you can imagine is exactly what's about to happen." Alara's throat was tight. I'm not that person anymore. You keep saying that. Because it's true. I got out. I left. I built a different life. Blackwood's pale blue eyes held steady. Why did you really leave the truth this time? The memory rose up like dark water. She'd kept it buried for 8 years, but it was always there waiting. Fallujah, 2017. We had intelligence on a high-value target, insurgent leader, responsible for multiple attacks. My spotter and I tracked him for 3 days. Her hands were wrapped around the coffee cup like a lifeline. When I finally had the shot, he was holding his daughter, maybe 7 years old, using her as a human shield. My spotter told me to take the shot anyway. Said the mission was too important. Blackwood waited, silent. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't shoot a child, even to get the target. So I let him go. And a week later, he carried out a suicide bombing at a checkpoint, killed 17 people, soldiers, civilians, people who might have lived if I'd taken that shot. The words hung in the air between them. The weight of 17 deaths, the weight of an impossible choice. I couldn't be that person anymore, Alara said. The one who has to make those decisions. Choose between bad and worse. Live with the consequences, no matter what I choose. So I left. And I've spent 8 years trying to be someone who never has to make that choice again. Blackwood reached across the table, put his weathered hand over hers. You made the right call, he said quietly. You refused to become the kind of person who murders children for tactical advantage. That's what made you the best sniper I ever trained, not your accuracy, your conscience. Tell that to the 17 people who died. War doesn't give us clean choices, only terrible ones. You chose to keep your humanity. That's worth something, and Alara pulled her hands back. It doesn't feel worth anything. They sat in silence. The wind howled outside. The lights flickered once but held. Finally, Blackwood said, if something happens tonight, if the pattern we're both seeing turns into something real, I need to know you're ready. I'm not. I told you I'm done. Then stay done. Stay in your quarters. Let the young ones handle it. But if they can't handle it, a lot of people are going to die. And you'll have to live with that too. He stood. Think about it. And Captain, if things go wrong, find me. We're stronger together. He left. Alara sat alone with her cold coffee and her thoughts and the sound of the storm outside. She told herself she was overreacting, seeing threats where none existed, letting old instincts create fear out of nothing. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. At 2100 hours, she returned to the visitor quarters. Tried to sleep. Couldn't. The wind hammered at the walls. Snow piled against the windows. She lay in the dark and listened to the storm and thought about patterns and failed equipment and that ridge watching over everything. At 0300, she heard the sensors alarm, then go silent, then alarm again. She was out of bed and pulling on clothes before she'd made a conscious decision to move. The morning of the attack came cold and clear. The storm had blown through during the night, leaving everything under fresh snow. Beautiful, pristine, the kind of morning that belonged on a postcard. Alara found Garrett in the command trailer at 0630. He looked like he hadn't slept. The radio crackled with static. The satellite link was still down. Did you hear the sensors last night? She asked. Yeah, third night in a row. Brennan did a patrol, found nothing. What about tracks? Snow covered everything. If something was there, we can't prove it. Alara moved to the window, looked at the north ridge. The sun was just touching the peaks, turning the snow golden pink. Perfect visibility now, clear lines of sight in every direction. If someone was up there, they could see everything. I want to leave, she said suddenly. Drive out today instead of tomorrow. Garrett turned to her. Why, what's wrong? I have a bad feeling. About what? She couldn't explain it without revealing what she was, who she'd been, the instincts that were screaming at her that something was very wrong. Just a feeling, women's intuition. He crossed to her, pulled her close. Roads might still be bad from the storm. Give it until this afternoon. Let the plows get through, okay? She nodded against his chest. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe it was just paranoia. Maybe 8 years of teaching high school had made her soft and she was seeing danger where none existed. But she didn't believe that. At 1300 hours, the soldiers gathered in the mess hall for lunch. The usual routine, the usual conversations, everything normal. Alara sat with Garrett. The sandwich still tasted like cardboard. She ate it anyway because she needed the calories, needed the fuel needed to maintain the appearance of normalcy, even as every nerve ending in her body screamed danger. Colonel Blackwood sat 3 tables away, reading a report. But every few minutes, his eyes would lift and scan the room. Checking. Always checking. The radio on Garrett's belt was quiet. No malfunctions, no alarms. Everything functioning normally for the first time in days. That was wrong, too. Equipment didn't just fix itself. At 13:38, Ilara was halfway through her sandwich when she heard it. Distant, almost imperceptible. A sound that didn't belong. She froze, listening. There, again. The faint whine of small engines. Quadcopters, maybe? Or drones. She opened her mouth to speak. The world exploded. The first blast hit the north perimeter with the force of a freight train. The mess hall shook. Windows shattered. Soldiers were thrown from their chairs. The lights died. Someone screamed. Alara's body reacted before her mind caught up. She was on the floor, hands over her head, all her training slamming back into place like a door that had been forced open. The alarm started screaming. A second explosion. Closer. The building groaned. Garrett was already moving, grabbing his rifle from where it leaned against the wall, shouting orders that were lost in the chaos. Contact north, all personnel to defensive positions. Soldiers scramble for weapons, training taking over. The mess hall emptied in 30 seconds of controlled chaos. Alara stayed on the floor. This wasn't her fight. She was a civilian, just a visiting wife, just a teacher. She had to get to the bunker, get to safety. But when she stood and looked out the broken window, she saw hell. The north fence was gone, just twisted metal and smoke. Two soldiers lay in the snow, not moving. A third was crawling, leaving a red trail behind him. Blood so bright against white snow. Incoming fire. The cracked snap of bullets overhead. The deeper thunder of mortars, or ARP. The sound fragmented in the wind coming from everywhere and nowhere. More explosions. The motor pool erupted in flames. A Humvee became a fireball. Black smoke poured into the clear blue sky. Soldiers were returning fire but hitting nothing. Shooting at shadows. At smoke. At an enemy they couldn't see. She could hear it in their fire discipline. Panic. Confusion. They were dying and didn't even know where to shoot. Alara's hands found the wall. Steadied herself. This was happening. This was real. The patterns she'd seen. The threats she'd felt. All of it coming true in fire and blood. And there was nothing she could do. She wasn't that person anymore. She was just Elle Sinclair. History teacher. Normal person. Civilian. The young soldier from the gate, Hollis stumbled past the window. His leg was shredded below the knee. He fell, started screaming, a sound that cut through all the other chaos. Something broke inside her. She moved toward the door. A hand caught her arm. Colonel Blackwood. His face was grim. Where are you going? The bunker. To safety. No, you're not. His pale blue eyes held hers. In them, she saw recognition, challenge, understanding. They need you, Captain. I'm not. Another explosion. Closer. The building shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Yes, you are. You've always been. And right now, 27 people are going to die unless you remember who you are. Alara's breath came fast and shallow. Terror and training warring inside her. 8 years of running. 8 years of hiding. 8 years of trying to be someone else. All of it crumbling in the face of fire. I can't. You can, and you will, because it's who you are. He released her arm, stepped back, giving her the choice. Through the window, more soldiers were falling. The defensive line was collapsing. In 5 minutes, maybe 10, the base would be overrun. Alara closed her eyes, saw the 17 faces from the checkpoint in Fallujah, the ones who died because she didn't take the shot. Saw Hollis bleeding in the snow. Saw all the young faces in this mess hall about to die because they were outmatched and outgunned and didn't have what they needed to survive. When she opened her eyes, they were different. Cold, clear, focused. Where's the armory? Blackwood smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of an old warrior who'd just watched another warrior wake up. Follow me. They ran into the killing zone together. The world outside was smoke and chaos and the sharp smell of burning diesel. Alara ran low across the compound, Blackwood keeping pace beside her despite his age. Bullets cracked overhead. The sound was familiar. Too familiar. Like stepping back into a nightmare she'd spent 8 years trying to forget. They reached the armory as a mortar round hit somewhere behind them. The concussion wave pushed them forward. Alara's ears rang, but her hands were steady as Blackwood worked the combination lock. The door swung open. Cold, dim light from a single bulb. Racks of rifles. Boxes of ammunition. The smell of gun oil and metal. She was inside before he'd finished opening the door. Her eyes scanned the racks with professional efficiency, found what she needed. An M110 semi-automatic sniper rifle. Stripped down, parts missing, but the barrel was intact. The action solid. She pulled it down, checked the chamber, worked the bolt. The movement was automatic. Muscle memory from another life. The rifle felt right in her hands, like coming home to a place you swore you'd never return to. "Scope," she said. Her voice had changed, colder, clinical. The voice of Captain Alara Sinclair, call sign Phantom 6, not L, the history teacher. Blackwood was already moving. He pulled a hard case from a locker. Inside was a Leupold Mark 6 scope, 12 power magnification. He handed it to her like a sacred object. "From Gulf War, 1991. I've kept it zeroed for 34 years. Their eyes met. In that moment, they understood each other completely. Two warriors who tried to leave the war behind, both of them failing. Alara mounted the scope. Her fingers remembered every movement, the weight distribution, the eye relief, the way the rings needed to be torqued to exact specifications. 10 seconds and it was done. Professional, perfect. The door burst open. Garrett stood there, rifle in hand, face streaked with soot and blood from a cut on his forehead. "What the hell are you doing? I told you to get to the bunker." Alara turned to face her husband, saw the moment he registered what he was seeing. His wife holding a rifle with the casual competence of someone who'd held thousands before. The way she stood, the way her hands knew exactly where to be. The expression on her face that was nothing like the woman he'd married. "Garrett, I need ammunition. Federal gold medal match. 7.62 NATO, 20 rounds. "What are you talking about? Ammunition? Now. You're not making any sense. You need to get to safety." He took another explosion. Closer. The armory walls shook. Dust filtered down from the ceiling. Through the open door, they could hear screaming. The volume of incoming fire was increasing. The defenders were being overwhelmed. "Your wife," Blackwood said quietly, "is Captain Alara Sinclair, Marine Scout Sniper, 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, call sign Phantom 6, 143 confirmed kills." The words landed like physical blows. Garrett's face went through a sequence of expressions. Confusion, disbelief, shock, something that might have been betrayal. "That's not possible. Elle's a teacher. She teaches history. She's never even mentioned military service." "I served 8 years, Alara said. Her voice was steady, matter of fact, like she was reporting for duty. 2 deployments, got out in 2017, started over, became someone else." 8 years married, Garrett said, his voice cracked. 8 years and you never told me." "I know, and we'll deal with that later. Right now I need ammunition or everyone here dies." A burst of automatic fire raked across the armory's exterior wall. Bullets punched through the metal siding. They all dropped. When the firing stopped, Garrett was staring at his wife from the floor, really seeing her for the first time. The way she'd moved, the way she'd dropped into a tactical crouch, the way she held the rifle. Everything about her was different, like the woman he'd known was just a costume and underneath was someone else entirely. "Can you shoot?" he asked. "Yes." "How well?" Blackwood answered. "She's the best I ever trained, the best I ever saw. If anyone can turn this around, it's her." Garrett looked between them, the old colonel, his wife who wasn't who he thought she was, the base falling apart outside. He made a decision. "Ammunition locker, 3B, combination is 4973. Alara moved, found the locker, worked the combination with steady hands. Inside were boxes of match-grade ammunition. She grabbed one box, 20 rounds, loaded a magazine with practiced efficiency, each round seated perfectly. No fumbling, no hesitation. She chambered a round. The bolt sliding home made a sound like a door closing on the past. "Where are you going?" Garrett asked. "South Ridge, rock shelf at 200 feet elevation. 630 yards to primary target." Her eyes were distant, calculating. "I need a diversion, someone to draw their attention north while I move south." "I'll do it," said a voice from the doorway. Staff Sergeant Brennan stood there bleeding from a cut on his arm, but his rifle up and ready. Behind him were 3 more soldiers, young faces streaked with smoke and fear, but still fighting. "We'll light them up from the east barrier," Brennan said. "Give you 5 minutes to get into position." "Make it loud," Alara said. "I want every hostile looking at you, not at me." Brennan's eyes held hers. In them she saw recognition. He understood what she was. what she was about to do. He nodded once, sharp, military. Yes, ma'am. Then he was gone, taking a squad with him. Garrett grabbed Alara's arm. After all this is over, we talk. Everything. I know. I love you. Whatever you were, whoever you are, that hasn't changed. I love you too. That's why I tried to bury this. He pulled her close, brief, desperate, then let go. She was already moving toward the door, already becoming someone else, someone he'd never known existed. Elle, he called after her. She paused, looked back. Don't die. I won't. Then she was gone into the smoke and chaos. The run to the South Ridge was 300 yards across open ground. Alara moved fast and low, using every piece of cover. A cargo container, a disabled vehicle, a pile of supply crates. The rifle was heavy across her back, but the weight was familiar. Right. Bullets tracked past her. Too close. She dove behind a concrete barrier, waited for a gap in the firing, counted the rhythm, learned the pattern. When the next burst came from the North Ridge, she was already moving. 200 yards, 150. She reached the base of the South Ridge as Brennan's squad opened up from the east. Heavy, sustained fire, loud, drawing attention, exactly what she needed. The rock face was steep and slick with ice. Alara started climbing. Her fingers found holds. Her boots scraped for purchase. The rifle banged against her back with every movement. Her breath came hard. She was older than the last time she'd done this. 8 years of teaching high school hadn't kept her in combat shape. But she climbed anyway, because people were dying below and this was the only way to save them. 50 feet, 75, 100. Her arms burned, her lungs screamed. Ice broke under her fingers and she slipped, caught herself, kept climbing. Don't look down, don't think about the fall. Just climb. 150 feet, 175. Almost there. The shelf was visible above her, a narrow ledge of rock jutting from the cliff face, barely wide enough for one person. Perfect. She hauled herself over the edge and lay flat, gasping. Her hands shook from exertion. Sweat froze on her face despite the cold. For 30 seconds, she couldn't move, could only breathe and try to make her heart slow down. Then training took over. She pushed the fatigue aside, swept snow from the rock with her forearm, set up her position with methodical precision. The spotting scope came out first, small but powerful. She glassed the North Ridge through the scope, searching through smoke and distance for targets. Movement. There, behind a fallen tree. 2 figures, rifle team. One firing while the other spotted and adjusted. Higher on the ridge, partially concealed by pine trees, the machine gun position. She could see the weapon itself. Belt-fed. Probably a PKM like Blackwood had guessed. The gunner was wearing white winter camouflage. Professional gear. The kind mercenaries used. She ranged the distance with the rangefinder, 630 yards, almost exactly what she'd estimated from memory. The wind hit her face from the northwest. She pulled out the weather station, read the numbers. 15 miles per hour sustained. Gusts to 22, temperature 4 degrees Celsius. Barometric pressure 29.8 and falling. Her mind did the calculations automatically. Bullet drop at this range with federal gold medal, match 168 grain. Wind drift, temperature effects on powder burn rate, air density compensation. The math came back instantly, like it had never left. Like 8 years meant nothing. Adjust elevation up 3.2 minutes of angle. Adjust windage right 1.8 minutes. Account for the slight upward angle to target. The Coriolis effect at this latitude was negligible, but she factored it anyway because precision was everything. She made the adjustments, checked them twice. The scope's reticle settled exactly where it needed to be. Below, the battle was going badly. She could hear it in the volume of fire. The defenders were being pushed back. The casualty count was climbing. If this went on much longer, the base would be overrun. Alara settled in behind the rifle, cheek weld perfect against the stock. Eye aligned with the scope. Her breathing slowed, in through the nose, out through the mouth, finding the rhythm. The machine gunner came into focus through the 12-power magnification. She could see details now. The weapon, the ammunition belt, the way he moved. He was good, experienced. Firing in controlled bursts. 9 rounds, pause. 9 rounds, professional discipline. He fired another burst, then reached for the barrel. Change coming. 10 seconds of vulnerability while he swapped the hot barrel for a cool one. This was the window. Alara's breathing slowed even more. Her heartbeat was visible through the scope as the crosshair rose and fell with each pulse. She timed it, found the space between beats, the still moment when the body was quietest. Her finger found the trigger. 2 pounds of pressure. She took up the slack, felt the wall, the precise point where the sear would release. The machine gunner pulled the barrel assembly free. Exposed. Vulnerable. Alara pressed through the wall. The rifle bucked. The suppressor kept the sound down, but the recoil was sharp against her shoulder. Through the scope, she saw the bullet's impact. The machine gunner's head snapped back. His body went limp, slumped over the weapon. 1. She worked the bolt. Smooth, fast, the spent casing ejected. A new round chambered. The whole action took less than 2 seconds. She was back on target before the dead gunner had finished falling. The rifle teams below had frozen. Confused. Their overwatch had just gone silent. They were looking up the ridge trying to understand what happened. Fatal hesitation. Alara found the next target, rifle team mid-position. One of them was standing, trying to see up to where the machine gunner had been. Standing made him visible, made him dead. Range 610 yards. Wind steady, elevation and windage already dialed in for similar distance. Minor adjustment for the lower angle. She fired. The standing shooter dropped like a puppet with cut strings. 2. Now they knew. Someone was shooting at them from a different angle. They'd been so focused on the base below that they'd forgotten to watch their flanks. Classic mistake. The kind that got people killed. The remaining attackers started moving. Scrambling for better cover, breaking their formation. Panic setting in. Below someone was shouting. A voice carrying across the compound. Garrett's voice. "They're breaking, push forward, push now!" The defenders surged forward, reclaiming ground, the pressure shifting. But the fight wasn't over yet. Alara tracked the movement on the ridge, found a spotter trying to relocate. He was running, moving fast through the trees. A difficult shot. Moving target at 600 yards through partial concealment. She led him, calculated his speed. Approximately 8 miles per hour. At 605 yards, that meant leading him by 2.3 feet. Account for wind, account for the fraction of a second between trigger, press, and bullet impact. She fired. The bullet caught him mid-stride, between the shoulder blades. He went down tumbling, didn't get up. 3. The pattern was establishing itself. The rhythm. It felt like breathing, like something she'd done so many times that it was inscribed in her DNA. 8 years meant nothing. She'd never stopped being this person. She'd just pretended for a while. The attackers were trying to reorganize. Someone was shouting orders, probably their team leader, trying to maintain control as his operation fell apart. Alara found a cluster of 4 men behind a rock outcrop, low position on the ridge. They were the closest to the base, the most immediate threat. One of them had a radio, talking into it rapidly, trying to coordinate with the now dead Overwatch. He was the priority target. Range 608 yards. Wind gusting now, 17 miles per hour. Variable. She waited for a lull, felt the wind on her face, judged it, trusted her instincts. The wind dropped. 3 seconds of relatively calm air. She fired. The radio operator folded forward. The radio fell into the snow. His teammates scattered. Smart. They broke in different directions, making themselves harder to track, making themselves harder to kill. 4. But Alara was faster. She picked the closest runner. He was moving toward a stand of trees, 40 yards to cover. If he made it, he'd be concealed. He was hauling a heavy pack, ammunition maybe, or more explosives. She tracked him through the scope, put the crosshair slightly ahead. Fired. Miss. The bullet kicked up snow 2 feet in front of him. He dove sideways. Her first miss of the engagement. It happened. Even the best shooters missed occasionally. Variables aligned wrong. Wind shifted at the last instant. 1,000 tiny factors that turned a perfect shot into a near miss. No emotion, no frustration. Just cycle the bolt and adjust. She found him again. He was crawling now, slower, easier target. She put the crosshair on his center mass. Fired, hit. He stopped moving. 5. The battle below had shifted dramatically. With the machine guns silent and the rifle teams broken, the defenders had the advantage. They were pushing forward in coordinated fire teams, reclaiming the north perimeter, clearing the breach in the fence. But the attack wasn't over. Alara swept her scope across the ridge, looking for remaining threats. Found them. 2 men setting up a mortar tube. 82 millimeter by the look of it. If they got that operational, they could drop rounds directly into the compound. The defenders would be slaughtered. The mortar team was working fast. Professional. They had the tube almost assembled, one man positioning the base plate, the other loading rounds from a crate. They had maybe 30 seconds before they could fire. She didn't have 30 seconds. The angle was bad. They were partially concealed behind rocks. She couldn't get a clean shot on either man, but she could see the mortar sight, the optical device they'd used to aim and adjust fire. It was a small target, maybe 6 inches across, at 615 yards. With gusting wind, impossible shot, except she'd made harder ones. Alara adjusted her hold, put the crosshair on the sight mechanism, controlled her breathing, controlled her, waited for her heartbeat to settle. The wind dropped again, just for a moment. She fired. Through the scope, she saw the sight explode, glass and metal fragments. The gunner jerked back, hands to his face. The loader dove away from the mortar. Both men abandoned the weapon and scrambled for cover. 6. The mortar threat was eliminated. The heavy weapons were down. The coordinated attack had collapsed into individuals trying to survive. Someone in the attacking force made the decision to withdraw. Alara could see it happening. They were pulling back in small groups, moving toward the far side of the North Ridge where vehicles must be waiting. Their operation had failed. Now it was time to escape before they lost everyone. She tracked them through the scope, counted heads, 9 visible, retreating in tactical bounds. One group covering while another moved, still professional even in defeat. Then she saw him, young, maybe 20 years old, wounded. His left leg was destroyed below the knee. He was dragging himself through the snow, leaving a bright red trail, moving toward the tree line, towards safety, 45 yards from cover. Alara put the crosshair on his back, range 582 yards, wind 16 miles per hour. Steady, she had all the data. The shot was easy. He was moving slowly, predictably. She could kill him without effort. Her finger rested on the trigger. 2 pounds of pressure and he would die. She watched him crawl, watched the blood spread in the snow. He'd lost his weapon. Wasn't shooting anymore. Wasn't a threat. Just a wounded enemy trying to reach safety. Trying to live. The memory hit her like a physical blow. Fallujah, 2017. Through the scope, a high-value target. Insurgent leader. Multiple attacks attributed to him. Intelligence said he was planning something bigger, something that would kill dozens. He was holding his daughter, 7 years old, dark hair, wide, frightened eyes, using her as a human shield because he knew American snipers wouldn't shoot through children. Her spotter's voice in her ear. Phantom 6, you are cleared hot. Take the shot. The crosshair on the target's head, the child's face just inches away. That's an order, Captain. Her finger on the trigger, all the pressure taken up. Just that last fraction of an inch, that's all it would take. Squeeze through and the target dies. Mission accomplished. 1 child dead as collateral damage. Acceptable losses according to the rules of engagement. She'd pulled her finger off the trigger. Negative. I will not engage human shield. Captain Sinclair, you are ordered to take that shot. Then court-martial me. I'm not killing that child. She'd pulled back from the rifle. Watched the target escape. Watched him disappear into the crowded streets of Fallujah with his daughter 1 week later. The same target. Suicide bombing at a checkpoint. 17 people killed. Soldiers and civilians. Men and women and children. Blown apart because she hadn't taken the shot. She'd stared at the photographs, read the names. 17 lives. 17 people who might have lived if she'd been willing to shoot through a child to get the bad guy. Her commanding officer's voice. Cold. Disappointed. Those deaths are on you, Captain. She knew. God, she knew. But she also knew she couldn't be the person who killed children. Couldn't cross that line. Even if it cost 17 other lives. Even if it made her a failure. She had to draw the line somewhere or she'd lose herself completely. That's why she'd left. That's why she'd spent 8 years trying to become someone else. Someone who never had to make those choices. But here she was again, crosshair on a target, finger on the trigger, making the choice. The young attacker reached the tree line, disappeared into the shadows. Gone. Alara lowered the rifle. 6 confirmed. 1 spared. She safed the weapon, sat back against the cold rock. Her hands were shaking now. Adrenaline crash hitting her all at once. She'd killed 6 people in 12 minutes, ended 6 lives. The muscle memory was still there. The coldness, the ability to put a crosshair on a human being and press the trigger without hesitation. She'd thought she'd lost that, hoped she'd lost it. But you never lose it. It's always there, waiting. The tears came suddenly, hot against her frozen face. 8 years of running, 8 years of pretending, 8 years of trying to be normal. All of it gone in 12 minutes. I thought I was done with this, she whispered to the empty air. But she'd never been done. She'd just been hiding. Below, the shooting had stopped. The smoke was beginning to clear. The white world was settling back into cold stillness. The attack was over. The base had held. Because of her. Alara started the climb down. Her legs shook. Her arms felt like rubber. The descent was harder than the climb. Gravity wanted to pull her off the rock face, wanted to dash her against the stones below. But she made it, one hold at a time, one foot after another. When she reached the bottom, she stood for a moment. Just breathing, just existing. The rifle felt heavier now, like it weighed more with 6 deaths added to its history. She started walking toward the gate, carrying the rifle openly now. No more hiding, no more pretending. Every soldier she passed stared. Word had spread. Someone had been shooting from the South Ridge. Someone had broken the attack. Young Private Sterling approached her. His face was streaked with tears and soot. He couldn't have been more than 19. A baby. "Ma'am, was that you on the ridge?" Alara nodded. "You saved my life. I froze up there. I couldn't move and someone was shooting at me and I just froze, but then they stopped. They all stopped. Because of you." He broke down crying. This kid who'd been through his first real combat and survived only because a middle-aged history teacher turned out to be a legendary sniper. Alara pulled him into a brief hug. "You did fine. First combat breaks everyone. You'll be stronger next time." "Thank you, ma'am. Thank you." She moved on. Found Garrett and Blackwood near the ruined command trailer. The roof had taken a mortar round. Everything inside was destroyed. They were coordinating the defensive perimeter, making sure the attackers didn't come back. Garrett saw her coming. His face was impossible to read. Relief and anger and confusion and love all mixed together. Too many emotions at once. "All targets down?" he asked. His voice was carefully neutral. "The important ones. The rest withdrew." Staff Sergeant Brennan appeared from somewhere, breathing hard, bleeding from multiple small cuts, but alive. "Ma'am, I need to know. How many did you drop?" 6 confirmed, maybe one more, but I couldn't verify." Brennan shook his head slowly. 6. In what, 15 minutes at 12? "Jesus Christ." He looked at Garrett. "Sir, we need to secure the perimeter and account for casualties. They might come back." "They won't," Alara said. Both men turned to her. "Not today. They lost their command and control, lost their heavy weapons, lost too many operators. They'll need time to regroup." "You sound confident," Brennan said. "I am." He studied her face. "Marine Scout Sniper. I heard the Colonel, 1st Battalion 8th Marines, your Phantom 6. Was. With respect, ma'am, I don't think you ever stopped being Phantom 6. You just took a vacation." He extended his hand. Alara shook it. His grip was firm. Grateful. "Thank you. You saved a lot of lives today." "Just returning the favor. You kept me safe down here. I kept you safe from up there. That's how it works." Brennan nodded and moved off to organize the cleanup. That left Alara standing with Garrett and Blackwood in the ruins of the command center. Blackwood spoke first. 6 confirmed in 12 minutes. Still the best I ever trained. "I missed one shot. Nobody's perfect, but you're damn close." He looked at the South Ridge. "That was a hell of a climb, at your age. Out of practice. I'm impressed." "I'm not as young as I used to be." "None of us are, but you still did it." He touched her shoulder briefly. "I'm proud of you, Captain." Then he walked away, leaving her alone with her husband. The silence stretched between them. So much to say, so many years of lies, so much truth that needed to come out. Finally, Garrett spoke. 8 years. "Yeah. Were you ever going to tell me? I wanted to, every single day, but the longer I waited, the harder it got. Why didn't you tell me from the beginning?" Alara set the rifle down against the wall, looked at her hands. They were steady now. The shaking had stopped. "Because I wanted to be someone else. I wanted to be just Elle, just a normal person living a normal life, not a killer." "You're not a killer. I have 143 confirmed kills. What does that make me? A Marine who did her job, a soldier who served her country." That's what I told myself for a long time. But after Fallujah, I couldn't anymore. I couldn't separate the job from who I was. So I left, started over, became someone new. Garrett ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know what to say. Part of me is angry. Part of me is grateful. Part of me doesn't even know who I've been married to. You've been married to me. This is me, all of it. The teacher and the sniper, the woman who makes bad coffee and grades papers, and the woman who can shoot a man at 600 yards. Both of them are real. But you lied to me. I did, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He looked at her for a long time. Really looked at her. Trying to reconcile the woman he'd known with the woman he'd just discovered. We'll talk about this later. Really talk. Everything. Every detail. I know. But right now I need to say something. Okay. Thank you for saving us, for being brave enough to become Phantom 6 again, even though I know you didn't want to. Alara felt tears coming, blinked them back. You're welcome. He pulled her close, held her tight. She could feel him trembling. Adrenaline crash, delayed shock from the combat, or maybe just emotion. Too much emotion for one day. They stood like that for a long moment, two people trying to figure out how to move forward with truths that changed everything. The sound of helicopters broke them apart. Medevacs arriving, Chinooks dropping through the clearing sky, rotors beating the air into white chaos. The wounded were loaded first. Corporal Hollis with his shredded leg, 3 others with serious injuries. Then the dead, 3 body bags in the snow. Tags attached. Someone would notify their families. Someone would deliver the news that would shatter lives. Alara watched from a distance. She'd given her statement to Brennan, walked through the timeline, marked her shooting positions on a map. Professional debrief. She knew the language, the procedures, but she didn't know how to feel. 8 years out, 8 years living a different life, and in 12 minutes she'd become what she was again. A sniper, a killer. The muscle memory was still there. The coldness, the ability to put a crosshair on a human being and press a trigger without hesitation. She'd thought she'd lost that, hoped she had lost it. But you never lose it, you just bury it. And when you need it, it comes back instantly. Like riding a bicycle, like breathing, like coming home to a place you swore you'd never return to. The sun was setting when the black SUVs arrived, 2 of them moving through the gate with the kind of authority that needed no explanation. Alara watched from the visitor quarters where she'd retreated after the medevacs left. She knew what was coming, had known since the moment she pulled that trigger on the South Ridge. You didn't save a military base from a coordinated assault without attracting attention. The knock came 20 minutes later, firm, professional. She opened the door to find Staff Sergeant Brennan standing there with 2 people she'd never seen before. Ma'am, these officers need to speak with you. Colonel Ashford and Major Carmichael, Army Intelligence. The woman was maybe 52, steel gray hair, pulled back, tight eyes that missed nothing. The man was younger, early 40s, with the build of someone who spent serious time in the gym. Both wore civilian clothes but carried themselves with unmistakable military bearing. Mrs. Sinclair, Colonel Ashford said, we need a few minutes of your time. It wasn't a request. They set up in a supply shed that had been converted into a temporary interview room. A folding table, 3 chairs, a laptop. The walls still smelled like motor oil and storage. Not exactly enhanced interrogation, but not comfortable either. Alara sat across from them, kept her hands visible on the table. Relaxed, but not too relaxed. She'd been through debriefs before. Knew how this worked. Former Captain Alara Sinclair, Ashford said, opening a file folder. Call sign Phantom 6, Scout Sniper 1st Battalion 8th Marines. 8 years of service, 2 deployments, 143 confirmed kills before separation in 2017. That's correct. Impressive record. Major Carmichael leaned forward. Why'd you leave? Personal reasons. Can you be more specific? Alara met his eyes. No. Ashford smiled slightly, like she appreciated the pushback. Let me be more specific then. Fallujah 2017, high-value target. You declined to engage when ordered. 1 week later, that same target killed 17 people in a suicide bombing shortly after you submitted paperwork for separation. The old wound opened, still raw after 8 years. Alara's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice level. I declined to engage a human shield. The target was using his daughter as protection. She was 7 years old. I wasn't going to shoot through a child. Even though it cost 17 lives. Yes. Do you regret that decision? The question landed like a blade between her ribs. Alara was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. I think about those 17 people every single day. I see their faces. I know their names. I carry that weight. But yes, I'd make the same decision again. Some lines you don't cross. even if it costs you everything. Carmichael made a note on his laptop. Ashford watched her face, reading, analyzing. Tell us about today, Ashford said. Alara walked them through it. The approach to the ridge, the climb, setting up position, the 6 shots, the targets, the ranges, wind conditions, everything clinical and professional, the language of after-action reports. When she finished, Carmichael turned his laptop around. The screen showed drone footage, aerial view from above the compound. She could see herself on the south ridge, each shot, each target falling, the whole engagement captured in high-definition video. The attackers had quadcopters recording, Carmichael said. We recovered this footage from one that crashed. They were documenting the assault, probably for training purposes or to sell to other clients. He scrolled forward. The footage showed the young wounded attacker crawling toward the tree line, showed Alara's rifle tracking him, holding position, the crosshair clearly visible on his back. Then nothing. He reached the trees and disappeared. Why'd you let him go? Ashford asked. Alara looked at the frozen image. Her rifle, the wounded enemy, the choice she'd made. Because he was no longer a combatant. He was wounded, fleeing, unarmed. He wasn't a threat. Rules of engagement would have allowed you to take that shot. I don't care what the rules allow. I care about being able to look at myself in the mirror. Ashford and Carmichael exchanged a glance, some silent communication passing between them. That's the same reasoning you used in Fallujah, Ashford said. Yes, ma'am, it is. I have a line I won't cross. Shooting wounded, helpless people is on the wrong side of that line. Ashford closed the laptop, leaned back in her chair. The attackers. We've identified them from equipment they left behind. Former Russian Spetsnaz, contract mercenaries, professional military operators. Alara nodded. I could tell from their tactics. Coordination, discipline, fire control. That wasn't militia. That was trained soldiers. This wasn't a random attack, Carmichael said. They were testing defensive capabilities, response times, communications vulnerabilities, gathering intelligence. For what? 60 miles east of here is Strategic Reserve Depot Bravo, 2,000 tons of ammunition and ordnance, 500 military personnel. We believe that's their actual target. The pieces fell into place. The pattern made sense now. FOB Granite was never the objective. It was a probe, a test. See how fast reinforcements arrive, how long it takes to restore communications, what resistance level exists. They'll hit the depot within 6 months, Alara said. Our assessment says the same, and now they know about you. Ashford turned the laptop back around, played the footage again, froze it on a clear shot of Alara's face. They have this. They know a legendary sniper intervened. They know you're here alive, active. I'm not active. I came to visit my husband. Mrs. Sinclair, you just demonstrated that you're very much active. Carmichael pulled out a tablet, swiped through documents. We're reinforcing Depot Bravo, upgrading defenses, increasing personnel. But we need tactical consultants, people who understand how professional contractors operate, how they think, how they'll adapt. Find someone else. We want you. No, Ashford's voice was firm. Mrs. Sinclair, this is a matter of national security. Then activate someone who's actually in the military. I'm a civilian, a teacher. I left that life 8 years ago. Did you, Carmichael gestured at the laptop screen? Because from where I'm sitting, you stepped back into it pretty easily. That was an emergency. My husband was in danger. And when Depot Bravo gets hit, when 500 soldiers are in danger, what then? Alara stood. Then you do your job and protect them. I'm done here. She walked to the door, put her hand on the handle. Your former unit is assigned to Depot Bravo, Ashford said quietly. Staff Sergeant Brennan. Corporal Hollis once he recovers from his injuries. Private Sterling. Alara's hand tightened on the door handle. That wasn't fair. That was manipulation, using her sense of responsibility against her. That's a low blow, Colonel. It's the truth. And you taught those boys today that someone will stand up when things get bad. You think they won't remember that. You think they won't count on you. They shouldn't count on me. I'm not their savior. Maybe not, but you're someone who can help keep them alive. Doesn't that matter? Alara opened the door. Find someone else. She left, walked out into the cold evening air. The compound was quieter now. The wounded evacuated, the dead removed, cleanup crews working to repair damage. Everything returning to some semblance of normal. except nothing would be normal again. She found Garrett in what remained of the command trailer. He was sorting through salvageable equipment, papers, hard drives, anything that could be saved from the wreckage. He looked up when she entered. "How'd the interview go?" "About how you'd expect. They want me to consult on Depot Bravo." "What did you tell them?" "No." Garrett set down the papers he was holding. "Why, Payum? Because I left that life. I'm not going back. Even to help. Even then." He was quiet for a moment, looking at her like he was trying to understand something fundamental. "El, can I ask you something?" "Yeah. When you were up on that ridge, when you were shooting, what did you feel?" The question she'd been avoiding, the truth she didn't want to face. "I felt complete, like I'd been incomplete for 8 years and suddenly I was whole again." "And that terrifies you?" "Yes." Garrett crossed to her, put his hands on her shoulders. "I'm angry that you didn't tell me. I'm hurt that you didn't trust me with this. But I'm not angry about who you are. I'm not hurt that you have this skill. It's not a skill. It's killing people." "No, it's protecting people. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes. Today, you could have stayed in the bunker, could have let everyone die, but you didn't. You risked your life to save 27 people. That's protection. That's heroism." Alara felt tears threatening, pushed them back. "I don't feel heroic. I feel like I've been lying to myself for 8 years. "Maybe you have been, or maybe you've been trying to figure out who you are. Both things can be true." They stood together in the ruined command trailer, the wreckage of the battle around them, the wreckage of their marriage somewhere between them. So much needed to be said, so much needed to be worked through. "After this," Garrett said, "after we get things stabilized here, we're going to counseling, real counseling, and you're going to tell me everything. Every detail of those 8 years I didn't know about." "Okay. And then we're going to figure out how to move forward. Together. No more secrets." "Okay." He pulled her close, held her. She felt safe there. Safer than she'd felt in years. Maybe that was what marriage was supposed to be. A place where you could be all of yourself, even the parts you didn't like. The next 3 days passed in a blur of debriefs and cleanup and official statements. Investigators came and went, took statements, collected evidence, built a case against an enemy that had already disappeared. Colonel Blackwood recovered well. The heart attack had been mild, cardiac stress from pushing too hard. The doctors cleared him after 48 hours but ordered him to take it easy. He ignored them, of course. Old warriors didn't know how to take it easy. He found Alara on the morning of the 4th day. She was packing her bag in the visitor quarters, getting ready to leave, to go home, to return to her normal life and pretend the last 4 days hadn't happened. "Running again," he asked from the doorway. "Going home." "There's a difference." "Is there?" She stopped packing, looked at him. "What do you want me to say?" "Colonel, I want you to admit what you already know. You're not done. You were never done. You just took a vacation. 8 years is a long vacation." "Not long enough, apparently." He came into the room, sat on one of the bunks. "I'm going to tell you something. When I retired, I thought I was done too. Thought I'd put it all behind me. The Cold War, operations, the Gulf War. All of it. I was going to be a normal old man. Play golf, fish, waste away quietly. What happened? I realized I was lying to myself. Being a warrior isn't something you do. It's something you are. And you can pretend otherwise, but the truth catches up eventually." Alara sat on the opposite bunk. "I don't want to be a warrior. I want to be a teacher, a wife, a normal person." "You can be all of those things. They're not mutually exclusive." "They feel mutually exclusive." Blackwood smiled. "That's because you're trying to choose. But you don't have to. You can teach history and be good at it. You can be a wife and love your husband. And when the world needs Phantom 6, you can answer that call too." "I don't want to answer that call." "I know, but you will, because it's who you are." He stood, moved to the door, paused. "They're going to call you about Depot Bravo. When they do, think about those boys you saved. Think about what it means to turn your back on people who need help. Then make your choice." He left. Alara sat alone in the quiet room, staring at her half-packed bag, trying to figure out who she was and who she wanted to be and whether those two things could ever align. The drive home took 7 hours. Roads were clear now, the storm long past. Alara drove in silence, watching the mountains give way to plains, leaving FOB granite behind, leaving the blood and fire and chaos behind. But she couldn't leave herself behind. That was the problem. Home was a small house in a quiet neighborhood. 2 bedrooms, a yard, a garage, everything normal and suburban and safe. She pulled into the driveway and sat for a moment, looking at the life she'd built, the carefully constructed normalcy. It felt like a costume now, like something she'd put on every morning and taken off every night, a performance that she'd maintained for 8 years until it became almost real. Almost. The house felt empty without Garrett. He was still at FOB Granite, would be for another week at least. Cleanup and investigation and all the bureaucratic aftermath of violence. She walked through the rooms alone, looked at the photos on the walls, her students, her colleagues, Garrett at their wedding, everything carefully curated to show a life with no shadows. But the shadows were there, had always been there, waiting. 6 months passed, winter turned to spring, the semester ended and began again. Alara taught her classes, graded papers, lived her normal life. Garrett came home and they started counseling. Slow, painful work of rebuilding trust, of learning to be honest, of figuring out how to be married to someone you'd hidden yourself from. The nightmares came back. She'd managed to suppress them for years, but after FOB Granite, they returned with a vengeance. She'd wake up sweating, seeing faces. The 6 she'd killed, the 17 from Fallujah, the 143 spread across 8 years of service. All of them watching her, asking why, asking what gave her the right. She didn't have good answers. On a Tuesday in late spring, her phone rang during lunch period. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then something made her pick up. "Hello, Captain Sinclair, it's Colonel Blackwood." His voice brought everything back. The compound, the ridge, the rifle in her hands, the feeling of being complete for 12 minutes. "Colonel, how are you, John? Back to fighting weight. Clean bill of health. The doctors cleared me for everything except running marathons." He paused. "I'm calling about Depot Bravo." Alara's hand tightened on the phone. "Colonel, I told them no." "I know you did, but things have changed. We have solid intelligence now. They're hitting it next week, Wednesday at 0400 hours. Same contractor team, possibly reinforced." "Then stop them." "We're trying, but they've adapted their tactics based on what happened at FOB Granite. They studied the drone footage. They know about you. They've planned for a counter-sniper threat. That's not my problem. Your old unit is assigned there. Brennan. Hollis recovered from his leg injury. Young Sterling, who cried when you saved his life. You can't use them against me." "I'm not using them. I'm stating facts. Those boys are going to be in a fight next week. A bad one. And they need every advantage they can get." Alara looked around her empty classroom. Student artwork on the walls. Desks in neat rows. The whiteboard with tomorrow's lesson plan written in her handwriting. Her normal life. Her safe life. "I'm not asking you to go operational," Blackwood continued. "Just consult. 2 days. Review their intelligence. Provide tactical assessment. Help them understand how these contractors think. Then you go home. 2 days. 2 days. Then you're back to teaching. Back to your life. But you'll know you did something. You'll know you helped." The class reunion was so quiet, so safe, so far removed from the world where people killed each other over ammunition depots and geopolitical interest. She'd built this life carefully, deliberately, as an escape from everything she'd been. But escape was an illusion. You couldn't escape yourself. "If I do this, if I consult, that's all it is. I'm not picking up a rifle again." "Understood. And after these 2 days, I'm done. Really done. No more calls, no more requests." "You have my word." Alara closed her eyes. Saw the faces of the boys she'd saved. Brennan's professional respect. Hollis crying on the ground with his shredded leg. Sterling breaking down in gratitude. They were somebody's sons, somebody's brothers. They mattered. "I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. Call me back by tonight." He hung up. Alara sat alone with her phone and her thoughts and the weight of a decision she didn't want to make. The bell rang. Students flooded in for her afternoon class. American history, unit on World War II, the cost of war, the price of freedom, the decisions that shape nations. She taught the lesson mechanically, going through the motions, but her mind was elsewhere. After school, she drove home, found Garrett in the kitchen making dinner. He looked up when she entered, read her face immediately. Blackwood called. "How did you know?" "Because you have that look, the one you get when someone asks you to be Phantom 6. She set her bag down. "Depot Bravo. They're hitting it next week. He wants me to consult." Just consult. 2 days, then I come home. What did you tell him? That I'd think about it. Garrett turned off the stove, came to her. What do you want to do? I want to stay here, stay safe, stay normal, pretend none of this ever happened. But, but those boys are going to be in a fight, and I might be able to help keep them alive. Then help them. I'm scared. Of what? That if I go back even for 2 days, I won't be able to stop. That I'll become Phantom 6 again, and Elle will disappear. Garrett took her hands. You're both people. You don't have to choose. And whatever you decide, I support you. But Elle, you've been carrying this weight for 6 months. This guilt about liking who you were on that ridge. Maybe it's time to accept that you can be both. I don't know how. Then we figure it out together. That's what we're doing, right? Figuring things out together. She pulled him close, held him, let herself be held. In that moment, she made her decision. At 6 o'clock, she called Blackwood. 2 days, consulting only, then I'm done. Thank you, Captain. Don't call me that. I'm just Elle. All right, just Elle who can shoot 6 targets in 12 minutes. When can you be here? Tomorrow morning. She hung up, looked at Garrett. I'm going to regret this. Maybe, but you'd regret not going more. The next morning, she packed a small bag. Practical clothes, nothing military. She was a consultant, a civilian expert, not a soldier. The distinction mattered even if it was mostly psychological. Garrett walked her to the car. Be safe. Come home. I will. And Elle, it's okay to be good at this. Being competent at something doesn't make you a bad person. She kissed him, got in the car, started the engine. The drive to Depot Bravo took 4 hours. It was larger than FOB Granite, more personnel, better defenses, but still vulnerable. Everywhere was vulnerable if the attackers were professional enough. Colonel Ashford met her at the gate. Mrs. Sinclair, thank you for coming. Let's be clear. I'm here to consult. Review intelligence. Provide assessment, nothing operational. Understood. They spent the day in a conference room. Maps, satellite imagery, intercepted communications, intelligence reports. The contractors had adapted their tactics, studied what went wrong at FOB Granite, learned from it. They'd planned for a counter-sniper. Multiple positions instead of one, overlapping fields of fire. They'd bring more heavy weapons, more personnel. They were serious about Depot Bravo. This wasn't a probe. This was the real assault. Alara analyzed everything, provided her assessment, where the attack would come from, what tactics they'd use, how to counter them. She was good at this. The tactical puzzle, the strategic thinking. It came naturally, like breathing. At 1800 hours, Ashford pulled her aside. We need to talk about something. What? Your assessment is solid, but there's a problem. They're counter-sniper positions. They're set up to eliminate anyone trying what you did at FOB Granite. Multiple interlocking zones, no clean shooting positions. So adjust your defensive posture. We have, but there's one position they can't cover. A water tower 1,000 yards from their primary approach. If someone could get up there, if someone could make shots at that range, they'd have the advantage. Alara saw where this was going. No. We need a sniper, a good one, and you're the best available. I said consulting only. I know what you said, but 500 people are going to be in the fight in 36 hours. You can sit in this conference room and hope your advice is enough, or you can be the difference between them living and dying. The choice again, always the choice. Run or fight, hide or stand. Pretend to be someone else or accept who you really were. Alara looked at the maps, the tactical overlay, the position Ashford was describing. 1,000 yards. Longer range than FOB Granite. More difficult, but possible. She'd made longer shots in the training. If I do this, when I'm done, I'm really done. No more calls, no more missions, no more Phantom 6. You have my word. Alara closed her eyes, thought about Garrett, about her classroom, about the life she'd built. Then she thought about Brennan and Hollis and Sterling, about 500 people who would die if this went wrong. Get me a rifle. The attack came at 0400 as predicted. Alara was already in position in the water tower. She climbed up in darkness, set up with the same ritualistic precision as FOB Granite, checking distances, reading wind, making calculations. The rifle was a different model this time, an M2010 enhanced sniper rifle, 300 grain bullets, better for extreme range. She'd zeroed it the night before, made her adjustments, trusted the equipment, 1,000 yards to the primary approach. Wind 12 miles per hour. Temperature -2 Celsius. Thin air at this elevation. Every factor mattered at this distance. The attack began with explosions, multiple positions, coordinated fire, heavy weapons. The contractors had learned their lessons, brought overwhelming force, but they hadn't counted on Phantom 6. Alara found her targets through the scope, took her time. One shot, one kill, no wasted ammunition, no unnecessary deaths, just precision. Professional, clean. She lost count after the first 6, stopped thinking about them as people. They were just targets, problems to solve, threats to eliminate. The coldness came back easily, too easily. The battle lasted 40 minutes. When it was over, the contractors withdrew. Again, their second failed assault. The bodies they left behind told the story. Professional operators killed by someone better. Alara climbed down from the water tower as the sun rose. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from the realization of what she'd just done. How easily she'd slipped back into being Phantom 6. How natural it had felt. Colonel Ashford was waiting at the bottom. How many? I don't know, I stopped counting. Preliminary reports say 11 confirmed, possibly more. 11 more deaths, 154 total in her career. She was back over 150, the number that marked you as elite, as legendary, as someone who was exceptionally good at killing people. We won, Ashford said. 0 friendly casualties, because of you. Good. There will be medals, commendations, recognition. I don't want any of that. I want to go home. Of course, but Elle, we'll need you again. This won't be the last time. No, this was the last time. Find someone else. She walked to her car, drove away from Depot Bravo. Away from the bodies and the blood and the proof that she'd never really stopped being a sniper. She'd just been pretending. The drive home took forever. She stopped twice, just to sit in parking lots and cry. Great racking sobs that came from somewhere deep, mourning something she couldn't name. Maybe mourning the person she'd tried to be. The normal person who taught history and graded papers and never thought about killing. That person was gone, had never really existed. It was always a lie. Garrett was waiting when she got home, took one look at her face and pulled her inside. Let her cry on his shoulder, didn't ask questions, just held her while she broke into pieces. I can't do this anymore, she said when she could finally speak. Can't do what? Pretend? I've been pretending for 8 years that I'm someone I'm not. And I'm tired. I'm so tired of lying to myself. Then stop pretending. Be who you are. I don't know who that is anymore. Yes, you do. You're Elle Sinclair. You teach history. You're my wife. And sometimes when people need help, you're Phantom 6. All of those things are true. None of them are lies. She pulled back to look at him. How can you accept this? How can you love someone who kills people? Because you don't kill people. You protect them. And you only do it when there's no other choice. That matters. Does it? Yes. They sat together in their living room, in their normal house, in their carefully constructed life, trying to figure out how to move forward. What happens now? She asked. Now we figure out how to integrate all of who you are. Maybe you teach during the school year. Maybe you consult for the military when they really need it. Maybe you find a way to use your skills that doesn't involve killing. I don't know, but we figure it out together. I'm scared. Me too, but we'll be scared together. That night, Alara couldn't sleep. She got up at 2 in the morning, went to her study, opened her desk drawer. Inside was Colonel Blackwood's scope from FOB Granite. He'd given it to her before she left Depot Bravo. A gift, a symbol, a reminder. She picked it up, felt the weight, the precision machining, the history it carried. Gulf War, FOB Granite, Depot Bravo, decades of war condensed into glass and metal. She started to put it back, then stopped. Instead, she set it on her desk, visible. No more hiding, no more pretending it didn't exist. The phone rang, 3 in the morning. Never good news. Hello, Captain Sinclair, Colonel Blackwood. I know you said no more calls, but there's a situation developing. Contractors are planning something bigger. Multiple installations, coordinated strikes. We're forming a task force, consulting positions, training roles. Nothing operational unless you choose. But we need the best minds we have, and you're one of them. Alara looked at the scope on her desk, then at the photo of her students, 2 parts of herself, both real. Both true. Send me the details. I'll review them, but I'm not promising anything. That's all I ask. She hung up, sat in the darkness, thinking about who she was and who she wanted to be and whether those two things could ever fully align. Maybe they couldn't, maybe that was okay. Maybe being human meant carrying contradictions, being multiple things at once, teacher and warrior, wife and sniper, normal person and someone with exceptional skills who'd seen exceptional things. The sun came up, a new day, new choices, new chances to figure out who Alara Sinclair really was. She made coffee, started grading papers, normal morning routine. But the scope sat on her desk, visible, acknowledged. Part of her life now, instead of buried in a drawer. Garrett came downstairs, saw the scope, raised an eyebrow. New decor choice. Something like that. He poured coffee, sat across from her at the kitchen table. Blackwood called. How did you know? Because that's what happens. They call. You're too good at this. They'll always call. And we deal with it case by case. You're not trapped. You can say no, but you can also say yes when it matters. What if I can't tell the difference? What if it all starts to matter? Then I'll help you remember what really matters. Us, this life, the students you teach, the difference you make every day in normal ways. She reached across the table, took his hand. I don't deserve you. Yeah, you do. You deserve someone who sees all of you and loves all of you. That's me. 3 weeks later, Alara stood in front of her classroom teaching about the cost of war. Her students listened with varying attention. Normal class, normal day. After school, she drove to Quantico Marine Base, not as Phantom 6, as a consultant. Once a month, she taught advanced counter-sniper tactics to the new generation of scout snipers, passing down knowledge, sharing hard-earned lessons, making sure fewer of them would face the choices she'd faced. Colonel Blackwood waited in the instructor's office, now officially her supervisor for the consulting program. He'd designed it specifically for her, a way to use her skills without pulling a trigger. How are the recruits? He asked. Green, but they'll learn. You're good at this. Teaching. I've had practice. She smiled slightly. 8 years of high school prepared me well. Blackwood pulled out a folder. There's a situation. Depot Charlie, similar threat pattern to Bravo. They want your assessment it. Alara took the folder, opened it, studied the intelligence reports with professional eyes. Send me the full briefing. I'll write up recommendations by Friday. Not going on site? No need. I can assess from here. Blackwood nodded, approval in his pale blue eyes. You've found your balance. I'm working on it. She drove home as the sun set, found Garrett in the kitchen making dinner. Their Tuesday routine. Normal, comfortable, real. How was Quantico? He asked. Good. The recruits are learning fast. And Blackwood wants me to review intel on Depot Charlie. I'll do it this weekend. Garrett kissed her forehead. Consulting only. Consulting only. They ate dinner together, talked about his day, her students' weekend plans, the ordinary rhythm of married life. Later, Alara graded papers at the kitchen table while Garrett read beside her. The scope sat on her desk in the study, visible but not dominant, part of her life not defining it. Her phone buzzed. Text from Private Sterling, now Corporal Sterling, stationed at Depot Bravo. Ma'am wanted to say thanks. Your tactical brief helped us pass inspection. Colonel Ashford says we're the best prepared unit in the region now. She typed back, you did the work. I just pointed the way. Stay sharp, Corporal. Another text appeared. This one from Colonel Ashford. Your assessment was spot on. Prevented 3 potential breach points. Thank you. Alara set the phone down, looked at Garrett. They're saying thank you. For what? For helping them stay alive, without me having to shoot anyone. Garrett reached across the table, took her hand. That's the best kind of help. Yeah, it is. Later that night, lying in bed, Garrett asked the question he'd been holding back. Are you happy? Alara thought about it, really thought about it. The classroom, the consulting work, the balance she'd found between Elle and Phantom 6, the marriage they'd rebuilt on honesty. I'm not done figuring that out, she said, but I'm closer than I've ever been. That's enough for now. Yeah, it is. She fell asleep with Garrett's arm around her, no nightmares that night. Just quiet darkness in the sense that maybe finally she'd found a way forward. The next morning, Saturday, she reviewed the Depot Charlie intelligence at her desk. The scope sat beside her laptop. Tool and symbol, she studied the tactical overlay, wrote detailed recommendations, defensive improvements, sensor placement, counter-sniper protocols. Everything they needed to know without her being there. When she finished, she emailed the report to Blackwood, then closed the laptop, walked to the kitchen where Garrett was making coffee. Done already, he asked. It's what I'm good at. One of many things. They spent the weekend together. Grocery shopping, movie night, Sunday brunch with friends who knew her as Elle, the history teacher, and nothing more. Normal life. The life she'd fought so hard to build and almost lost. Monday morning back in her classroom. American history. She taught about impossible choices. About soldiers who did their best in situations with no good answers. About coming home changed. Her students didn't know she was teaching from experience. That was okay. Some stories didn't need to be told. After class, a student approached. Emily, 16, bright-eyed and earnest. Miss Sinclair, I'm thinking about joining the military. My recruiter says I should consider special operations. But I'm scared. Alara looked at this young woman, saw herself 20 years ago, full of potential and naivete and courage she didn't know she had. Being scared is smart, Alara said. It means you understand the weight of the choice. But fear shouldn't make your decision. Only you can know if it's right for you. Were you ever in the military, Miss Sinclair? The question hung there. 8 years ago, she would have lied. Even 6 months ago, she might have deflected. But she'd promised herself no more lies. At least not the important ones. Yes, a long time ago. Was it worth it? Alara thought about Fallujah, about FOB Granite, about Depot Bravo, about the 17 lives lost and the dozens saved, about finding Garrett and building this life and learning who she really was. That's complicated, she said. But yes, in ways I didn't expect. It made me who I am, for better and worse. Emily nodded, understanding or pretending to. Thank you, Miss Sinclair. After she left, Alara sat at her desk, looked at the photo of Garrett, at the student artwork on the walls, at the lesson plans for tomorrow. Her phone buzzed. Blackwood. Your Depot Charlie assessment was perfect. They're implementing all recommendations. You may have prevented another attack without firing a shot. She smiled. Type back, that's the goal, Colonel. Drinks next week, Quantico Officers Club. There's someone I want you to meet. Former Delta operator, transitioned to teaching. I think you two would have a lot to talk about. I'll be there. She put the phone away, gathered her things, drove home through late afternoon traffic. Garrett was already there starting dinner. How was your day? He asked. Good. A student asked about joining the military. I tried to give her honest advice. What did you say? That it would change her, and she needed to be ready for that. Garrett pulled her close. Wise words. I had a good teacher. She looked up at him. I'm sorry I lied to you for so long. I know, and I've forgiven you. Now you need to forgive yourself. I'm working on it. They cooked together, ate together, watched the new, normal evening. Normal life. But underneath a foundation of honesty they hadn't had before. Stronger for being tested. Before bed, Alara went to her study, opened the desk drawer where Blackwood's scope sat alongside a folder. She pulled out the folder. Inside, letters from soldiers she'd helped. Thank you notes. Photos of units she'd trained. Corporal Sterling with his squad. Staff Sergeant Brennan promoted to Sergeant First Class. Corporal Hollis back on active duty, leg fully recovered. Lives that continued because of what she'd done. Not just the people she'd saved by shooting, but the people she'd saved by teaching others how to defend themselves. That was the real difference she was making now. She closed the folder, turned off the light, went to bed beside her husband. And for the first time in 8 years, Alara Sinclair slept through the night without dreaming of the faces of the dead. Because she'd finally figured out what Colonel Blackwood had tried to tell her being a warrior didn't mean being a killer. It meant being someone who protected. Sometimes with a rifle. Sometimes with knowledge. Sometimes just by being there when people needed you. She was Elle Sinclair, history teacher, wife, consultant. And on one cold day at FOB Granite for 12 minutes, she'd been Phantom 6. All of it was true. None of it was a lie, and that was enough.